Hello and welcome. I'm Elaine Canyon, sweetly writing happily ever after, one book at a time. And in this video, we're building your cover design toolbox. All right, we have covered the principles of design, color in design, typography in design, and composition in design. And now that I've given you that base foundation for your book cover, plus all of the steps that I gave you so that you would know what would be the correct book cover for you, it's time to choose software. Now, I'm going to assume before we jump in to choosing the right software that you have done those 5 steps that I kept stressing in all of the videos about choosing the right color and the right typography and the right layout, that you know what your book cover needs to look like at this point, that you've maybe done a few sketches to see what your book cover might look like on a piece of paper. You need to be at a point where you understand all of the elements of your book cover before you ever touch a computer, as far as the software and putting it all together in software goes. So please make sure that you're not just jumping headfirst into software, because that's not how you create a memorable book cover that is going to sell your book. Creating a memorable book cover that's going to sell your book requires all of that legwork that I've talked about. And there will be other videos where I'll walk you through designing my book cover specifically, and I'll give you those step-by-step processes and show you my process. But I want you to be able to start looking at software programs and practicing with them, because some of these are going to have a pretty big learning curve, and we'll talk about that. So I'm going to give you 10 different software options. All of these options I think are good options, and some of them range from free all the way up to ridiculous sums of money that I won't pay. But if you're in a position where you can pay them, then they're worthwhile options. I'll explain what each software is best used for. I'll tell you what the prices are at the time of this recording, and then I'll give it my overall rating as a designer specifically. So this isn't necessarily a rating of, oh, this is good software. It's going to be a scale of 1 to 10, and I'm going to be specifically giving it a rating on how well it will develop your book cover with you. Canva is the first software I want to talk about. Now, Canva does have a free to use option. They also have paid options. You can pay $12.99 a month, or you can pay $119.99 annually, and that is at the time of this recording. Canva is best suited for when you already have the photo that you know is going to be your book cover, or the image you've created. Like, you already have what this is going to be, and all you need to do is put text on top of it, and you don't need to change anything about the font. Nothing that we've talked about with like the kerning and things like that, nothing needs to change. You have an image, and all you need to be able to do is put text on that image. Canva is a good option for that. They also have ebook templates ready to go that you can grab and put anything on it that you want. They also have a whole bunch of images you can choose from. And obviously, when you pay for it, you get more images available to you. Here's the thing with it though. These are stock images that everybody who pays for Canva has access to. And you can't really do a lot to manipulate those images. You can add different effects to the images, as in like you can change the transparency, and for some of them you can add things on top of each other, and some of the images are transparent background, and so you can layer things, but it's just not a whole lot that you can do. However, because of that, it's extremely easy to use. There's a very low threshold to Canva as far as learning how to work in it and be successful in it. I like Canva, and I think it's a great program. I just don't love it for creating book covers. It's hard to make something that's memorable and that's actually going to help sell your book when there's so little that Canva can actually do. So overall, my designer rating for this is a 6 out of 10. Next up is BookBrush. Now, BookBrush is very akin to Canva, except that it's made specifically for authors. BookBrush has ebook and print book templates that you can use, and they also have all of the promo templates that you might want. So you can put your book cover into a Kindle, and you can put your book cover into a phone, and you can put it on one of those 3D books. They have all of that there for you, and a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do with it too. BookBrush is a really good option for you as an author and your author marketing that you need to be doing and your book marketing that you need to be doing. BookBrush is good for that. Like Canva, they have a free version that you can use. They also have a paid version, and it has tiers. Now, that bottom level tier is going to cost you $8.25 per month or $99 annually at the time of this recording. Just like Canva, BookBrush, as far as your book cover goes, is very much a situation of you already have a photo or an image that you're using as the background ready, and you just need to put text on it. And maybe some effects. They do have certain effects that you can add to an image to jazz it up a little bit. But again, it's hard to make a good, memorable book cover in BookBrush. I'm not saying you can't do it in BookBrush or Canva. I'm just saying that they make it really difficult to do in BookBrush and Canva. But if you already have that image ready to go and you've created it in something else and you're not worried about adjusting the individual pieces of text and each letter in the title, if you don't care about that, or if you don't think you need that, and that the image you've chosen or created is going to carry your cover for you, then BookBrush is another good option to be able to have the image on the template and then just put text where you want it. Overall, as a designer, I rate BookBrush at a 6.5 out of 10. Before I jump into these next 8 programs that I'm going to share with you, I need to stress that we are moving into designer software with all of these. And that's going to require some time on your end. Every single one of these programs, some of them are free, some of them are paid for. You will need to take time to learn. There will be a learning curve. It will require time, and it's going to be frustrating for the first little bit. You'll need to commit to experimenting and trying things and maybe doing some designs that have nothing to do with your cover just so you can learn to interact with the software. Now, that being said, that time investment is not just a book cover time investment, because when you make the point of learning how to use these different software tools, you now have the ability to create far more than just your book cover. It allows you to create promos and be really specific with how your ads are going to look or how your website's going to look, images that you're going to use. You'll have the skill set to make things that are unique and don't look like they came from a template that's on Canva or BookBrush. Now, obviously those templates on Canva and BookBrush, there's nothing wrong with them. I use them. But they do give you that sense that everybody has them. And so if you're ever looking to create something unique that's specific to you and your brand and what you want your book to look like and what you want your marketing to look like, knowing how to use these tools helps you immensely. First is Inkscape. I really like Inkscape. This is the open source software answer to things like Adobe Illustrator and Affinity 2 Designer. Inkscape works in what we call SVGs, scalable vector graphics. And when you see an illustrated cover, usually they're made in something like Inkscape or Affinity 2 Designer or Adobe Illustrator. These are most popular in contemporary romantic comedy. I see them everywhere over there. And they're moving out of just romantic comedy. You're starting to see them in places like A Court of Tricksters, my favorite book cover. You can see an illustrated cover in Haunting Miss Trentwood by Belinda Kroll. Illustrated covers are made with programs like Inkscape. YouTube is full of tutorials on how to use Inkscape and how to work with fonts and create these images and work with them and change them. And there's no shortage of ways for you to learn how to use this program. It's also free. That's what open source means. Open source means that the code is completely available to everyone and that it's developed essentially by the community for the community. So everybody who works in Inkscape does it because the community comes together to help support them. They either support with monetary donations, they support with time in helping the development, or they support with creating content for Inkscape that helps to promote it and get it out in front of people. I'm a big believer in open source software. Inkscape is the first one you're going to hear about. I'm going to give you multiple open source options because they're what I personally use and I love them and stand by them. Inkscape's only drawback is that it cannot export in CMYK. Now, remember our color episode, we talked about RGB colors and CMYK colors. Colors for screens, RGB, made with light, and colors for print, CMYK, made with ink. Now, this is really important if you are creating a print book cover. There are workarounds with other open source software, but that is the major drawback to Inkscape, is that when you save your SVG or your PDF, you're not going to get it saved in a CMYK color format. It's going to save in an RGB color format. But like I said, there are ways to work around that. And if you're only producing an ebook, at least for the time being, then you don't have to worry about it at all because Inkscape can create exactly what you need. And you'll see when I get to how much it costs to have the programs that have this built into them and they can just export to any color format, that maybe that workaround is a decent trade-off for not having to pay how much these paid for programs are. Overall, as a designer, I give Inkscape an 8 out of 10. And like I said, it is the program that I use for creating scalable vector graphics. It is the program I prefer to create logos in. It is one of my favorite places to work in and design in. Next is Gimp. Gimp is also open source, and it's the answer to things like Adobe Photoshop or Affinity to Photo. What's nice about Gimp is it does allow you to export in CMYK. It's one of the programs you can use with Inkscape to get that workaround, and we'll talk about one more program that helps us do that as well here in a minute. Like Inkscape, Gimp has so many tutorials on YouTube and online that teach you how to do everything and anything you could think of, and it's fantastic because there's no shortage of help out there when you need it. The one drawback I have with Gimp is that they hide things. There are tools that if I don't consistently use them, I have to go Google where they are because they're just not where I think they should be, which is true of almost any design software or any massive software that has a whole bunch that you're trying to work with and change. It's very common to have software that tools get lost. Gimp just seems really good at it with me. I lose tools all the time in Gimp and have to go Google, wait, where is this? I don't remember because I don't use it enough to know where it is instinctively. But other than that, it's a fantastic software. It works seamlessly. It's easy to use. I really enjoy it. It is the software that I use personally and professionally. And as a designer, I rate it at a 9 out of 10. Next is Scribus. Scribus is open source software, and this is the answer to programs like Adobe InDesign and Affinity to Publisher. This is a desktop publishing application. Now, Scribus isn't necessarily built for creating graphics. Scribus is built for bringing graphics in for the most part. So think about how a magazine is put together. You have pictures and things like that you bring in, and Scribus would be a program that you'd bring all of those images in and you'd be able to arrange them with text and do a lot to adjust things and make sure they're exactly where you want them. So you'd use Scribus in conjunction with something like Gimp or something like Inkscape, where you would make a lot of that layering, and then Scribus is where you put everything together so that you could send a file off to a printer, or you could upload your book cover to Barnes and Noble or Amazon or other places that'll do print on demand, like Draft to Digital's print on demand. Scribus is that kind of program. That's not to say that you can't do really cool and amazing things in Scribus. Like, I've seen some phenomenal work done in Scribus that I didn't think was possible. But it does mean that I don't want you to say, oh, I'm going to use Scribus, and then be very confused when you get to this program and realize you can't create the things you thought you could create. Now, Scribus's major drawback, it still looks like it was developed in the 90s. Now, there's things you can tweak in this last update that allow you to do things like dark mode and that kind of thing. But Scribus is not initially user-friendly. You have to want to learn how to use it because it doesn't just lend itself to usability. But once you do learn how to use it and you put that time in, it's phenomenal the things you can do and create. I really like it. I was kind of against it, and at the time that I found it, I was looking at other paid options, but I told myself to take the time and really dig into it and figure out how to use it before I decided to give up on it. And then if I put the time in and I didn't like it, then I would go pay for something. And I put the time in and I ended up liking it. I think Scribus is a great option, but it does require the time and require you to really push forward and be consistent and have some grit with it, because it doesn't just come easily. At least it didn't just come easily to me. It might have absolutely could have come easily to other people, but to me, it took some time. Scribus is also one of the programs that you can use to get images and files in Inkscape and get them into a CMYK color format. So that is also something that I really like about Scribus, is that I can make sure that with Scribus and Inkscape and Gimp, between the three of them, I can create files for anything in any format, and it's fabulous. As a designer, I give Scribus an overall rating of 7.5 out of 10. This next one is a little different. This program is called Krita, or Krita, depending on who you're talking to. I like Krita. But this is a digital drawing tool. Now, Krita is open source, but you're only going to use this if you are someone who already draws beautiful things and you watched these videos and you said, oh, but I could draw my cover. If I could just draw my cover and then put the text on it, it would be fine. This is the program that you're going to go learn how to use. You're going to download it and you're going to go and watch tutorials, because there's tons of them. There's tons of Krita tutorials. And you're going to learn how to use it, and you're going to create your book cover in Krita, and then you'll take the file that you download from there and you'll move it into one of these other options to put the text on it. Because this is only going to work if you can draw well. Now, I don't personally draw super well. I draw well enough. I'm not saying that I don't draw, but I wouldn't draw my book cover at all. Not ever would I draw my book cover. But I absolutely love to goof off and play in Krita because it's a fun program. It's like having a doodle pad that I can sit there and goof off with. If you've heard of Procreate or Autodesk sketching, those are paid options to what Krita is. I like Krita because it is a desktop app, and so it works with like my Wacom tablet, which is really nice, and it also works with my touchscreen laptop, and so I can fold my laptop over so it's just the screen and take my stylus out and I can draw with Krita, and it works seamlessly and I don't have to go buy a tablet for it, which is really nice. As a designer, I give Krita a 9 out of 10. It's a fabulous program. It's super fun to play in. However, if you do not already draw beautiful pictures on a piece of paper, you're not using this unless that's something that you want to be able to do. If you want to be able to draw your book cover, then this is where you're going to start practicing, because you're going to need to build yourself up to that. Okay, so we're moving out of open source and free programs and into the massive amount of money paid programs. So first, we're going to talk about the flagship of all design software, and that is Adobe. In Adobe Suite of all of their programs, you are going to be looking at Illustrator, which is that equivalent to Inkscape, Photoshop, the equivalent to Gimp, and InDesign, which is the equivalent to Scribus. There is no free for Adobe. There's no free anything, not even for students. I had to pay for it. And at the time I got a discount. I really hope they still do a discount because this is expensive. Adobe charges $20.99 a month per program. Now, if you do the math, for those 3 programs, we're looking at $63. However, if you pay for the entire suite, so everything that Adobe makes, that includes Acrobat, that includes Premiere, all of it. If you pay for all of that, then it's going to cost you $54.99 a month. That's a lot of money, no matter which way you cut it. That is a lot of money. That is the major drawback for Adobe, that it has a price wall, and it is a big price wall. It is not an easy one to overcome for a lot of people. That's $60 a month. That's hard. At least it is for me to justify $60 a month. Now, the kicker here is that Adobe's programs require as much time and effort to learn as all of those open source programs that I just went over with you. I was trained in these programs. When I went through my graphic design courses, these are the programs we used. These are the ones that I had to buy textbooks for. I own textbooks for Adobe. But they're just as time consuming as every other program out there for you to learn. They require just as much effort. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, it's easier. I disagree. It's not that it's easier. It's that it has more content out there. You will find a minimum of 100 tutorials for every little thing that you can think you want to do in any of Adobe's programs, because it is the standard program that all graphic designers use. And anybody with a computer can now make YouTube videos. I'm here doing it. And so is every other author tuber and every other graphic designer who's on YouTube. So it's easier to get to what you want. It's easier to find people showing you how to do the things you want to do. Now, with that means that you have this massive community doing things for Adobe programs. So you can get things like brushes that look like Celtic braids that you don't have to go through and create a Celtic braid because the brush exists. And so you can buy the brush that somebody has already put together and install it into your copy of Adobe Illustrator. And now you've got a Celtic braid brush that you didn't have to put any effort into. You just had to pay for it, and now you've got it. So that is a benefit, a massive benefit to using Adobe's product, is that a ton of people use them. And so you have a ton of resources for them. That massive drawback, though, is that $60 a month to get all 3. And I'm not saying you have to have all 3, but even $21 a month is a commitment, and you're locking yourself in to just one of them. And that can be scary sometimes, to say, well, I'm only going to have the one program. I'm not going to use anything else. And as a designer, that's not something I'm willing to do. However, these programs are good programs, but because of that price barrier, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. I don't think that the benefit is worth the cost, especially when it comes to a monthly fee. So these last programs are the only ones on the list that I've never used before, but they are good programs, and I wanted to make sure that I talked about them with you so that you would have an idea of what's out there. I'm not going to go into detail about how they function or what they do because, like I said, I haven't used them, and I won't rate them either because of that. So you've heard me mention it a couple of times. Affinity 2. Affinity 2 has their own versions for SVG graphics and photo manipulation and desktop publishing. And those are called Designer, Photo, and Publisher. Affinity works on a different pay system than Adobe does. Adobe wants a monthly fee, and then you get access to all of their updates consistently. And every time they change something in the product, you get it. Affinity works the way Adobe used to. when you used to go to the store and buy a CD to put into your computer to download the software, and you had a license and it would only install on so many computers, and you had to have an internet connection so it could verify that you were using it the way you were supposed to. All of that. This works that way. Affinity works that way. So at the time of this recording, you can buy each of those programs individually for your desktop or your Mac for $69.99. Now, if you want to have them on your iPad, and only on an iPad, this is not on Android, then you can have each of those programs for $19.99 each. If you want a universal license, which means that you can put these programs on a Mac, on a Windows machine, or on an iPad, then you can pay $169.99 and have everything. All 3 programs for all 3 devices, which is a heck of a lot better of a deal than $60 a month. Like I said, I've never used this before. What I have found online has a lot of good things about it. And Affinity, like Adobe, does keep things updated. And something cool that they did was that when Affinity 2 came out, they put together a package that you could pay an upgrade fee. And so if you had already bought Affinity 1, then you could pay the upgrade fee and just upgrade to Affinity 2, and you didn't have to buy everything all over again. These last 2 I want to talk about are the paid options for being able to draw your cover. So Procreate is Apple only. You can only use it on an iPad. And everybody that I've talked to that uses Procreate loves it. Procreate, like Adobe, is used widely. And so it has a massive community making tutorials and tricks and tips and all of those things in YouTube and online and places that you can get to them to learn how to use the program quickly and efficiently. It does require you to have a certain kind of stylus, apparently, from what I understand. And as long as you have that stylus, then the app works well. It's $12.99 in the Apple Store. Now, if you're an Android user, there is also an option for you. It's called Infinite Painter. And Infinite Painter does have a free to use option where it's just drawing. And I've played around in that a little bit. I uninstalled it after 2 or 3 days because I like Krita better. And we've talked about why. But Infinite Painter will work on your tablet, on your phone, Android or Mac, it doesn't matter. And at the time of this recording, it is $9.99. You download the app for free, and then you have to go in and create an account, and then you pay for it through your account. And you get a 7-day free trial. So if you want to be able to look at all of the things you can do with Infinite Painter, then you can go in and look at all of the things and play around with it. And at the end of the 7 days, if you don't like it, you uninstall it. And if you do like it, then you can pay for it and have that. Or you can just use the free version where it's just being able to draw. And there you have it. 10 options for the software that you can use to design your book cover. I know that this was a lot of information. I want to stress what I talked about at the beginning one more time. Jumping in to software before you have done any of your groundwork is setting yourself up for failure in your book cover design. Make sure that you already know what your book cover is going to look like. Make sure that you know the elements you need and what compositional layout you're using, and that you've already chosen fonts and you've already chosen colors. Make sure you have all of those pieces ready before you ever jump into software. But part of your research in looking at all of your covers is that you're going to see what kind of cover you're creating. And so if you are creating something that looks very photo heavy to you, this is the time to jump in to Gimp tutorials, or to buy Photoshop and jump into Photoshop tutorials, or to buy Affinity Photo and jump into Affinity Photo tutorials. This is the time to figure out what kind of software you need to be using so that you can start learning that software and be ready to put your cover together when you feel confident in it. The next videos you're going to see as I talk about cover design are going to be walking you through my process of designing a book cover. And so we're going to be shifting a little bit away from me sitting here in front of the camera and talking to you, and more of me talking to you as we're looking at images that I'm sketching, as we're looking at what I'm researching on the computer, that sort of thing. That's where we're heading at this point. So I want you to be aware of what your book cover needs so that you can be looking at these programs and practicing and learning how to use them. But keep in mind that there's more to this process, and we're going to step in to that process together as you watch me go through it as a designer. And like I've said, I use all of these open source options, Gimp, Inkscape, and Scribus, and Krita. And I do use Canva and BookBrush specifically for when I'm creating things like social media posts. That's where I use those. So as you follow me through this journey, you're going to see those open source software programs as I create my book cover. So as you're learning how to use the right software based on the research you've done, make sure you come back, because I'm going to walk you through the process. Everything that I've taught you, you're going to see me go through it and create my book cover specifically for my reader magnet. And so you'll be able to watch that process unfold, and you're going to get to see what that looks like for me as a designer. Have you ever used any of these programs from this list, or was everything new to you? Are there programs that you think should have been on my list that weren't? I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps other authors find it. And if you don't want to miss that whole journey that we're going to go on together as I design my cover for my reader magnet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I post videos on Wednesdays about discovery writing, cover design, and self-publishing on almost nothing. I hope to see you again soon.